Okay, so my little waterproof relay arrived. You can kind of see here it has the labeling. I'm going to mount it under this bolt over here on the side. It should be a good spot for it. And it came with a pigtail like this, right? So they just snap together, and it has like the little seal. It's supposed to make it waterproof, yada. And then, so it has these different color combinations here. So I'm going to end up wiring this up so that when the ignition is turned on, so when the ignition turns on, I turn that switch in my dash up, it's going to send a hot down here, and that's just going to energize the coil, which is going to be the white wire in the pigtail, or number 86. And then I'm going to tap off straight from there over to the fuel pump. So that will engage the fuel pump. And then I'm going to use this relay and put one leg of the, for the ignition that needs to be grounded to shut the motor off. Is going to go to the normally closed pin on here. And then the other wire is going to hook to the ground. So that way, whenever this guy gets energized, it's going to move over to the unused terminal, which is going to be open to nothing, and will allow it, the engine to run, and then the fuel pump to run. I turn the switch off in the dash, kills power, then the spring moves the contactor back over, shorts out the ignition back to ground, and shuts the engine off. This just saves me having to run another switch and wire from the dash, which I don't feel like having to mess with again. So it's fairly simple. So you kind of match up from your schematics, or however you wrote it down, the different color wires here, and put it together. So let's do it. So the blue on the pigtail I'm not going to be using, so I'm just going to snip it off. I can use that wire for something later. And I don't really care if it's makes contact with anything on this guy, because it's going to just be not used for anything, and it's going to, since I'm switching ground, I'm not switching hot, it won't matter if it touches any metal. So next, we're going to take the red and black that are going to get tied together at one side. So let's strip the wires on these. Later. Okay, now that the pigtail is all made up, it's time to connect her in. So over here in the existing factory harness, this guy right here, this solid black one, that's the ignition. So that's going to connect up. To this guy here. I'm going to put you, just in case there's like a little tiny bit of shrink wrap. And then just for a little extra insurance, these little tiny wires, I'm just going to put a little bit of heat shrink. And then it'll help keep any extra dirt from getting in. Okay, so that one's done. Okay, so now we have our ground. I'm just going to reuse this ground because it's already got a really nice ground going down there. So I'm just going to another piece. Another piece of shrink wrap real fast. So up, and then I'll go in there. All right, so now that that's all connected, now I grab the relay. I can mount it. Just going to plug it in. All right, so finally the thing was super tight, get it in. So now I'm just going to stick it under here. Tighten it down. There we go. Now the only wire left is going to be this white wire, which is going to be from the pigtail or the intermediate connection. I still need to make a wire from here. It'll go up to the top above the motor. Then it'll interface. So let's go ahead and make that guy up, and then we can use like some convoluted tubing and kind of pretty all this up. All right, so now that that's made, I got the one end going to the positive side of the coil. The other end's going over to the fuel pump. So now what I need to do is I need to make my pigtail that's gonna, this guy right here, start working on here. Same wire used in the dash. So I'm gonna put a ground on here, ground it to the motor, another one to feed off the positive, and then the other one's gonna connect here for that ignition. So I'm going to go ahead and make those connections. Okay, so I've got my pigtail here set up. So nice ground right here under that bolt. Positive over here. Now that ignition is hooked up. And then I got quite a bit of slack with this guy here because I don't know exactly where I need to connect it. So I'm going to leave myself some more slack, and then I need to put some plug-ins on this side. Alright, so I add some convoluted tubing to all the wires, got to move out of the way so they're not interfering with anything. Same over here. So then I have my pigtail, my big old pigtail thing here that I need to finish making. But really what I need to do now is I need to put the motor back in so I can mock it up. And then I also want to rotate the pull cord a couple clocks. I don't remember if I needed one or two. I'll have to check it again when I put it in. So that if I need to pull it, you can actually pull the cord pulling out the back of the vehicle.